We have a fantastic lineup of speakers, as you all saw, and Melissa will be doing the introductions for our speakers today. Dr. Melissa Bodogna is an international speaker, consultant, and award-winning learning designer who has spent her career producing measurable results by unleashing human potential. That sounds like a big task. Melissa and the team at KatalysisX sit at the intersection of the future of work and learning, where they help leaders reimagine their future in this age of machines and connections, then co-create initiatives designed to get them there. So that sounds like a bigger task.
Yes, sometimes.
Would you please make a welcome Dr. Melissa Bodogna.
Thanks, Phil, and thank you all for being here today. I won't take too much of your time before I introduce our keynote speaker, but I do want to kind of frame and give you a bit of the context of today. And if the technology works, the video I have for 60 seconds, we'll do that, and I'll just give a little follow-up, so just bear with me. I recognize that some of the text went by quite quickly, so there's a quote that I like to use when I open these kind of sessions by a writer by the name of William Gibson, and he said that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And what we're looking at today, and we'll be speaking with our panelists a little bit later, are some of the megatrends that are impacting the industry, specifically financial services and technology, but all across the board, quite frankly. And some of those megatrends, the obvious one is technology in the form of further automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, and other exponential technologies. And that's the obvious one that we tend to point to. There's others, though, in terms of the multi-generational workforce that we're seeing, and the longevity of us as a human race, and living longer and working longer, and what that means. Also, the greater mobility that we have and the freedom that comes along with that, in terms of being able to work from anywhere, at any time, and all the good stuff that goes with that as well. And complexities, too. Further globalization, and also the shifting sociocultural behaviors. 10 years ago, most of us did not have our heads in our phones as we walked down the street, and trying to engage with our children and actually have conversations and eye contact was a little bit easier than it is today. So there's definitely these shifting behaviors. Oftentimes, there's a statistic that's been bandied about up to 45% of jobs that currently exist in 10 to 15 years' time are set not to exist in Australia alone. Now, I want to put a little asterisk on that, because that doesn't necessarily mean that 45% of jobs are going to be gone. It just means that they're going to shift and change, and we're going to have different types of jobs. Having said that, there will be displacement, and what's been being said is that while we've always had technological displacement, it's never happened at the pace that it's predicted at the moment. So what I'm wanting to do today is start the conversation and open the conversation about these megatrends, how they're going to be impacting our industries, our lives, our children's futures, and all those kinds of very interesting and thought-provoking ideas. So not to belabor this, because the show's not about me, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Brad Chan. Brad is the CEO of Bana Property Group, a third-generation family business with a vision to transform its shopping centers into community hubs. Brad is also the founder of Haymarket HQ, a startup hub with a particular focus on helping startups grow into Asian markets. The hub also provides space for events and talks and subjects such as innovation, business in Asia, and promoting culturally diverse leadership. Brad acts as a mentor to both startups as well as individuals and retains a personal interest in angel investing. Previously, he was president of the Haymarket Chamber of Commerce for 5 years, sat on the City of Sydney Chinese New Year Advisory Committee, and was the first president of the Australian Asian Association of Bennelong. He currently chairs a local preschool and remains involved with community and local government committees. He recently established the Bana Foundation, the family group's philanthropy arm. If you can all join me in welcoming Ms. Chan, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks for that introduction, Melissa. I think that was a longer introduction than my speech is going to be. Now, I don't have any videos or PowerPoints, and I was just thinking, I'm supposed to be talking about technology, and so probably not a good start. We're going to have to go the old-fashioned way today. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. I've been scratching my head lately, and it's not because of dandruff, although my scalp has been a little dry, but just trying to work out what to say to a group of CFOs and accountants about the future of work. Although I've been enjoying reading about CPA, the whole sagas in the media over recent months, I don't think I could speak with particular authority about the future of your industry. But I was offered a free lunch by Phillip, so here I am, and I notice a free pen and a notebook as well, so that's a bonus. Now, I'm no naked CEO, but I'm happy to provide my own thoughts on the topic on the future of work. So I want to basically talk about a couple of things today. Firstly, what I envisage the workforce of the future to be like and the changes to expect. And secondly, because of these ongoing changes, I want to talk about the importance of developing leadership skills and the role you all should play in developing our future workforce. In your profession, you've probably been told that the only certainty in life, apart from death, is taxes. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus said that the only constant is change. Yet, yes, change is inevitable, except from a vending machine, of course. Yet, it is said that the world today is changing at a faster rate than ever. Although I'd say every generation probably thought that. The development of automation, enabled by robotics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are all expected to make many skills obsolete and new skills a must. Sometimes I joke that a new skill I've had to develop because of technological efficiencies is being able to walk on a busy street while sending a text message and trying not to bump into a pole. It's not a skill that I needed in the past, and it's not as easy as it sounds because it takes fast fingers, peripheral vision, nimble feet, and the effective use of emoticons. But in all seriousness, already we are seeing that digital platforms and other innovations are rapidly changing the fundamental nature of work. It's hard not to get a little alarmed by all the media attention on how technology is affecting jobs. Headlines stating that technology will kill 40% of Aussie jobs by 2030 are pretty scary. I then look at the Australian startup success story Atlassian, which is a $10 billion company, already in similar value to Qantas, that sells hundreds of millions of dollars of software, but with no salespeople. Now, wouldn't it be great to be able to sell your products with no salespeople? Which typically means no salaries, no commissions, and no annoying egos. I don't think anyone can say with any certainty what the future of work will be like. However, the reality is that most occupations will change rather than get automated out, and undoubtedly there will be new jobs created utilising skills we haven't even thought of yet. Sometimes I think about how easy technology has made things. In 1997, I spent a year backpacking around Europe, and in my backpack, I would carry a thick, heavy Lonely Planet guidebook, and to make things lighter, I'd rip out those pages after I visited the city, just so my backpack wouldn't be as heavy. Now, I could just use the Lonely Planet app on my phone. I used to carry a camera, and I'd have to post the film back to Australia to get developed. Now this thing takes high resolution photos and stores it on the cloud for me. I would have to buy a tourist map of each city for each new destination. Now Google Maps makes it so easy. Every few days I'd have to visit an internet cafe to email friends and family. Now I can still email, but also communicate on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter or Snapchat. And if I get lonely in a city, I can jump on Tinder and hook up with someone. So I'm told. Now, this has also replaced my Walkman I used to travel with. And I can also play games on it, read the newspapers, stream movies, and even now pay for my shopping with it. Finally, I used to buy a phone card in each country just in order to call home. Yes, you guessed it. This rectangular thing is actually a phone too. How easy life has become with just one device. I'm sure you've all had your own first-hand experience of technology creating efficiencies in your work. That may be tasks that are now largely automated. Software systems and bank accounts that can talk to each other. And can you believe it? Even the tax office is trying to make things easier. As a result, I'm assuming that most of you who are still charging based on billable hours are probably seeing average client fees decrease, but this also creates opportunities to look at initiatives such as value-based pricing, being able to provide key insights to your clients based on their data, and also getting increased referrals by providing exceptional customer experiences. At the end of the day, it's worth remembering that change brings opportunity. And probably the biggest opportunity for all of you in the room is to develop the skills necessary to capitalise on what lies ahead. Which leads me to my next point, the importance of developing leadership skills. Although we don't know with any certainty what the workplaces of the future will be like, we do know that there will always be a human element involved, most probably engaged in higher skill or value-add activities, whereas repetitive tasks can be replaced by machines. I believe that despite continued advancements in technology, successful organisations will always be built around good people. Having new technical skills such as working with big data or digital technology will be important, but it is the soft skills, which are transferable skills that will continue to be essential and will future-proof your business. And the soft skills related to leadership where you can have the most impact: communication, adaptability, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, service design, and people management, to name a few. If you look at the workforce today, already millennials have taken over as the largest representative generation. And we know certain things about this group. They express little loyalty to their employers and won't stay with their company in the long term. They choose organisations that share their personal values. They look for purpose beyond profit. They want mentorship, they want leadership skill development opportunities, and they want the right environment. You're probably thinking, why would I want them? They sound pretty damn demanding. But millennials no longer want to work for you, they want to work with you. And they are our future workforce. And therefore the importance of strong, authentic leadership and the ability to build a great culture will not only improve your chances of attracting them, but also engaging and retaining them. I was fortunate last week to spend an hour or so interviewing David Thodey, the ex-CEO of Telstra. During David's 6 years as CEO, he doubled the value of Telstra from about 40 billion to 80 billion. And he said, when he came into that role, his highest priority was changing the culture. He's a big believer that culture eats strategy for breakfast. and that the reinforcement of the company's values, the willingness to call out poor behaviour, and the rewarding of positive behaviours was essential in turning Telstra around. Our rapidly changing world creates the need for agile and nimble organisations that can move quickly, that are flexible, and that can learn and adapt. It is imperative that you have the culture and structure set up to achieve this. When I'm interviewing someone for a job, I rarely focus on the technical skills. That's something I've learned over time. And I would say that technical skills are secondary. Instead, the criteria I'm assessing someone against are firstly, alignment to the company's core values, and secondly, how adaptable they are. Because adaptability helps determine how you respond to change, whether you are flexible, a team player, and how well you are able to bounce back from adversity. People who are adaptable also excel as leaders. And being adaptable as a leader is vitally important. Your ability to equip yourself with various leadership tools and adapt them to the right situations will make a big difference. I find that many people have different expectations of their leaders, and those who are discerning and emotionally intelligent enough to adapt to the particular situation are the more successful ones. I thought I might try an experiment, just on leadership. So if I pose to you 3 different images of leadership, which do you think is most important? So if the first image is a conductor leading a symphony, the second image is a picture of 2 hands shaking, and the third image is a warrior leading the charge on horseback. So can I have a show of hands? Who thinks their view of leadership is the first one, the conductor leading the symphony? Yeah, okay, some hands up there. Okay, hands up those who feel that the second one, the 2 hands shaking, is their ideal view of leadership. Okay, a few there. And hands up, thirdly, the warrior leading the charge on horseback. Okay, still a few hands up. I don't think everyone put their hands up, so maybe there's some confusion in the room, but what it does show me is there are differing views of leadership, okay? And, often conflict arises when the staff member has a different view of what your leadership style should be, and you have a particular view of what your leadership style should be. And so there's a disconnect there, and that's often where different expectations and therefore conflict arises. So to some people, a leader is someone who takes charge, while others think of a leader as a facilitator. There is no right or wrong answer, but an effective leader is adaptable to the situation. And therefore, there's a real need to continue to build your leadership skills and have various tools to deal with various situations. The other leadership opportunity I want to mention is the ability to capitalise on diversity, a key driver of innovation. As we approach a time when the workforce is potentially formed of 5 generations, there is a need to communicate and create alignment across these diverse teams of different ages, skills, disciplines, working styles and cultures. Cross-cultural competency will continue to be important skills for all workers, not just leaders. It's also an opportunity to promote and develop leaders already with cultural awareness that may not fit the traditional model of leaders. Typically, the ideal leader is seen as the extroverted, charismatic and outspoken candidate. Yes, I'm thinking of Trump right now. This view of leadership is quite contrary to the leadership styles of many cultures, such as Asians. From a personal point of view, it is a bit disappointing to look at the high proportion of accountants of Asian heritage at the entry level of organisations, yet see such low levels of representation at the management and leadership level within these same companies. I think this underrepresentation of Australians of Asian background is prevalent not just in accounting firms, but in most industries, in the banks, politics, even television, except for maybe MasterChef and My Kitchen Rules. There seems to be a lot of Asian chefs on those shows. There's certainly an opportunity to rethink our leaders of tomorrow and what attributes will help our workplaces of the future to be successful. The world is changing quickly, and leadership has to change too. We can't presume what we did in the past will work in the future. This is what makes leadership so challenging and rewarding. To conclude, the unstoppable rise of automation, AI, and other forms of technology comes with unprecedented levels of speed. Speed of making decisions, speed of getting goods or services to market, speed of executing a strategy. In an age where a startup can disrupt an entire industry almost overnight, businesses must be prepared to change. I want to leave you with a quote from Rupert Murdoch, an admired business leader, not because of his longevity and not because he married Jerry Hall, but because of his resilience and determination. Murdoch said, "The world is changing very fast. Big will not beat small anymore. It will be the fast beating the slow." So, are you changing fast enough? Thank you.
Okay, so on our panel today, as you've already met, is Brad Chan. We also have Luke Austin. Luke is from Hallway. He is the CFO of the local subsidiary here in Sydney. And again, more about Mr. Austin's in your packet there. Next in our panel, as we move down, is Mr. Kumar Parakala. And Kumar is the global digital leader at GAICD, which is a global professional services firm. Again, more in your packets there. And last but not least is Ms. Katya Davin, and she is a partner in advisory at KPMG. So thank you all for joining us today. It's wonderful for you to be here.
Thank you.
Because we have such a short time together, I'm just going to get stuck into it, and I'm going to kind of stand off to the side here so I don't have to juggle the mic as well, and you guys can just pass that around. So as we were talking about today, I'm just going to go right to the first question. Given the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence and other cognitive technologies in the next 20 years, as it's being predicted, how do you see this impacting the workforces in the financial and technology industries? And we might just start with Kumar on this one, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I think in the technology industry, if you're a part of the technology industry, you'll see that we're going through an unprecedented amount of change. Most of the technology companies, well-known brands, they're all struggling. And, they are at the forefront of the digital revolution, but the whole industry is getting disrupted as we speak, as of today. I'll give you an example. In 2016, we did a thought leadership piece, and I went to the CEOs of all leading technology companies of the world, all the big names, and I said to them, watch out, in 12 to 18 months, your business will be going faster than you can imagine. And I've actually put that in my report. And they said, Kumar, everything is under control. We are going to continue to grow. And 18 months down the line, the technology industry, a lot of people believe, is going through its Kodak moment. So unprecedented amount of change the industry is going through because of poor judgment of CEOs around the world in the industry.
Great, thank you. Whoever would like to add to that.
Sure, thanks, Melissa. It's quite a provocative start from Kumar. From my perspective, I think the earlier comments were appropriate in terms of the change that we're going through in the workforce. I'm optimistic, maybe naively so, that it presents more of an opportunity than it does a problem. And I also agree with the earlier comments that it's the transition that will be the difficult part of this change. But we hopefully transition to a different future. What I see is certainly technology enabling us to become more efficient and require less resources. If I talk close to home in terms of financial staff, for example, they've been disrupted for a while, for a number of years already, through shared services as well as technology and automation, and that will continue. But I think you mentioned earlier the point about embracing humanity. I think that's a very important point. I think what I'm seeing in the finance teams is it's skills such as communication, collaboration, being able to work with the business that's becoming more and more important. It's becoming more and more important, but it's also a huge opportunity for finance staff. I know the makeup of our team has changed from what it would have looked like 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there'd be a lot of jobs requiring routine processing of transactions, less value add, more routine tasks. Now, most of the team are in what I describe as business partner roles, where they're immersed inside the business, and it's their relationship with business stakeholders and how they communicate and collaborate that's the most important. I would say, though, that the technical skill needs to be there. You need the foundation, but it's those soft skills on top of the technical base that I think are becoming more important as we go through this disruption.
Sorry, I might just add that I think if we look at history as well, there's always been fear about technology and whether it's taking away our jobs. And if you look at the Luddites back in the 19th century, they were concerned that textile workers were worried about machines taking over their jobs, and they went to the extent of smashing the machines and things like that. Now, we won't really see that happening this time around, but fear is normal, and change is, as I mentioned before, inevitable. So I think as long as we're embracing change and going along with it, I think most businesses will be fine. And I like to think there'll be more opportunities created as a result of new technology. And they talk about a pretty large multiplier effect when there's a new technological orientated job comes into place. There's a multiplier effect of 5 times other jobs as a result of that. So I think I'm optimistic as well. The other thing I'd say is sometimes change forces us to look at what humans are naturally better at. Should we be doing the data processing? Probably not, but what is our competitive advantage as humans, and therefore focus on what we do best. So at the end of the day, we're probably competing with machines, so making sure our skills are better than what machines can do anyway.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think that I prefer to look at the positive aspects of the transformation. To answer bluntly your question, is going to change a lot, though. So the way we look at work is going to change massively. Again, it's not new. Happened many times in history. What's happened this time around is that actually is affecting the white-collar workforce. So we need to really think about that. So everything that you can possibly imagine that is process work, which we call the rule-based process work, is going to change, or technology will enable. I'll just give you a very specific example. JP Morgan launched this project called COIN. COIN stands for Contract Interpretation. And they had a bunch, you can imagine an army of junior lawyers, and their mission was to look at contracts that came in the door and say, does this comply with the standards of the organization? Now, today technology, and I'm not a technology by heart person, can actually do this for you. So they can actually process thousands and thousands of paperwork and actually identify those are the 10 contracts that actually are coming out of the norm if you look at the 10,000 that we just assessed overnight. And then those 10 contracts are the ones that the senior lawyer will come and say, okay, there is a problem here that we need to solve. So this is the way it's going to change. And if you think about, every single kind of process work that we have in the organization is going to be massive. Of course, you can spend the whole afternoon and say how technology will impact, but that's a very, specific example. Now, what does it mean for all of us? It means that we need to, reassess the way we work, the way we are structured in organizations, the way, and on the flip side, what type of opportunities that brings. Because if you think about, for instance, in the world of insurance, the fact that we have machines that process thousands and thousands of applications overnight probably enable lower scales of society to have access to insurance, which is something that is not a possibility now. So I see this as a brave new world that we can actually, tap into a number of opportunities.
Awesome, thanks for that. There's a lot to pick up from. There's a lot of strands, isn't there, that we can go on. I like this idea of, I've heard in each what you've said, what is human work? And should we be doing the data processing? And the question is, maybe not. Maybe there's more better use of our time and our intellect and those kinds of things. Just moving on with that, and Katja, we'll start with you because this is what I'm focusing on just for a second here is the KPMG, their 2017 Global CEO Outlook for Australia reported that 59% of Australian CEOs say that, quote, their organization is placing greater importance on trust, values, and culture in order to sustain their long-term future. So just starting with you, how do we build trust in a time of disruption? And what does that look like in practice, especially when it is across borders and generations and time zones and things like that?
Well, if you think about, you gave the stats, right? 40% will change or will transform somehow. Many people will lose their jobs. Many people will regain their jobs, or create new ways of working. I think that, when I talk with my clients about this topic, one of the things that I put on the top of mind for them is what's the moral responsibility that organizations have in the middle of this, and how do you treat the moral question? How do we actually inform somebody that their job most likely will disappear in the next 2 years, or the next 6 months, or 12 months? And how is our relationship with the workforce? How do we have an obligation to upskill them? Do we have an obligation to give them, the perspective of a new life? So there is so many moral questions here that we need to address, and that's the beginning of. And my advice is always open the dialogue. The sooner we do this, the better. There are some organizations in UK that they've done that. They enter in a collaborative process with their employees and said, let us know if your job is going to be, if you believe that you can automate your job, please, so we can actually work together on the possibility of upskilling. And this type of dialogue needs to be more frequent, more open, and very, very honest, if you want. So I think that it's not an easy task, though. We need to reflect very much about that. And I was talking with Martin here on the table. It would be lovely if you could go back, actually advance 10 years and say what's going to change, and then come back and what are the things that what are the decisions that we are making now that will affect the future. There are so many questions that you're missing about. If people lose their jobs, what does it mean for their income? Do we have a universal basic income? Do we ensure a basic income for everybody so we can actually make a living, right? But even if you have a basic income, what about the question of purpose? Everybody needs to have a purpose in life. How do we reorganize the whole society? So there are many layers for this conversation or this discussion, and we all need to be engaged. I don't have all the answers, but the answer around how do you build a trust is by being very open and honest.
Who would like to take that next?
I think the question you've asked is a very important one, and I've done close to about 500 board and CEO briefings in the last 4 years or so, and this is very fundamental to creating the future organization. And I get paid to challenge the CEOs and the boards, and often challenge them for some things which they are not thinking, which they're used to, and which they take it as a norm and often take it as a standard. The standards are changing, assumptions are changing, ground rules are changing. And if you want to create trust, culture, and a values-driven organization, we have to challenge the organization structure that many organizations follow in a capitalistic model, because the new generation has a different set of values and a different set of beliefs, and that changes the way you engage with them. So some of the existing organizational models that are driven towards operational efficiency are no longer applicable going forward. So leading companies are looking at what are the new organizational structures they can create to drive trust and drive culture.
Just, would you be able to provide maybe an example of what one of those new cultures or structures kind of would look like?
Oh, absolutely. So I have 2 clients, and I'm doing this myself. I'm looking at network organization structure, where there's no boss, there's no hierarchy, and the network thrives. A self-driven, self-managed network thrives based on the value that the individuals in that network provide to each other, and therefore you have a relatively more flat structure, but it has certain governance around it. But that kind of a model is a community-centric model, where you create new communities, and those communities create value, and that value then becomes asset, and that's how businesses make money. So there's a very different way of thinking about the businesses you're running in terms of communities and assets.
Would anyone else like to add to that?
I guess just quick comment. It's very innovative thinking on organisational structure. In Byway's context, we're I guess a little behind that. We still have to a certain extent a traditional organisational structure with a certain amount of command and control. But what's interesting is the trust aspect, because our business has been growing so rapidly in the last 5 to 10 years, we have a lot of young managers. Right? I agree with the earlier point regarding open communication, driving trust. What happens when you have a young manager looking after a team? That they don't know how to communicate properly, and they shy away from those important but sometimes difficult conversations. So I think once again they're human skills, they're soft skills, and I think they'll be even more important going forward.
I'm probably not that old, but I think more of my views are more old school. When it comes to trust, I'm a firm believer that trust is built on personal relationships. And so I think if you're trying to look at an organisation that's trying to build trust across borders, it's difficult. Okay? If I was doing that, I'd try and find a way to get the people together from overseas, 2-3 times a year, because I think that's the only way to build real trust. I remember Phillip mentioned Start of Origin, so I remember Wayne Pearce, who was I think he was a blues coach one year, but he's a business coach, and he talks about the importance of trust. And he spoke about the State of Origin. They go away for about 8 days to camp, but the first 3 of those days is all team bonding. So they don't worry about strategies, tactics. They spend all that time on building that trust, doing things that bond a team. And Wayne Pearce tells me, when he does this for organisations, team bonding is important, but what he really does, he gets 2 people together face to face, and they talk about things that are emotional to themselves. What's the biggest challenge of your life, and what's the greatest success you've ever achieved, and all those kind of things that bring out some emotion. And that's when you're getting a real personal relationship developing, and that's where trust arises. And that's when difficult conversations become used as well, when you've got that relationship. So my view is it's difficult to build trust with remote workers. And the other issue with doing it across borders is, different cultures have different ways of building trust and doing business. So if you look at the Americans, they might, for them, trust might be built through, repeated performance over time. Whereas, say, for the Chinese, before you even talk about business, you have to go out to a restaurant, you talk about family and other things, and that's the way you build trust. With Koreans, you might get drunk together or do karaoke together and stuff like that. And so, again, different cultures have different views on trust. And so it is difficult for global organisations to build trust across borders. There are ways to improve it, but I think businesses need to acknowledge some of those barriers as well.
Excellent. Thank you all for that. I know this notion of trust and soft skills and human skills is really where I focus a lot of time with my work. And so often we think because we can speak and talk to each other that we're actually conveying the meanings that we think we are. And we have so many different cultural lenses, and our ethnic or national cultures are just one of them. So I love hearing the validation of some of the work that I'm working on at the moment. But it is that trust, it is human to human. And with the future of work, it seems like to me that the pendulum's swinging back from a breakdown of community to a build-up of community, and at the heart of community is relationship, right? Because if currency all went away tomorrow, what would we have? What would we really, how would we function as a society? And it comes down to who we trust the most, I think. So at this point, I'm just going to pause for a second and see if there's any questions from, and I'll kind of move the mic back and forth.
So my question is in 2 parts. So in the future, my view is that we're going to have these things called business colonies, which will be people in, for example, in the Philippines might be the best at customer service, people in India might be the best at IT, and people in Sri Lanka might be the best at bookkeeping or what have you. So if there's, and this is to a point that Brad made earlier about cross-cultural competency. So that's my first question. How do you bond all this disparate group? And I think you spoke about the idea of people, networked workforces and so forth. So that's the first question. And interestingly enough, with these business colonies, so for example, if you go to Hollywood, that's where you go on a movie, everybody's there. So there'll be all these business colonies around the world, and work in the future, in my view, will go from, at the moment we will go to where work is, and we go to the CBD, but in the future work will go to where the skills are. So my first question is about cross-cultural competencies, and my second then, more also to Brad, I read in your bio that you're building these hubs. So if you've got to, and what's interesting, person of Italian heritage, Chinese, Australian, Indian and Portuguese, right here. But the common thing is English, in Sydney, I guess. But the point is, in the buildings that you're building, these hubs, how do you create that type of environment? Because in the future, I don't think we're going to be sitting in partitioned offices and so forth. We're going to be sitting in those community hubs and create that sense of community. So two parts. One is about how do you do the cross-cultural competency thing amongst all these different workforces, and then how do you create the built environment that enhances that? So it's a lot of questions.
Someone want to have a go first?
That's a big one.
All right.
Just on the cross-cultural aspect, I'm not sure this answers your question. I'll give you a little bit of my experience. We're in a cross-cultural environment in our local office at Macquarie, where we have broadly three groups, which actually two groups, Mandarin speakers and non-Mandarin speakers. But it's really Chinese Aussies, Chinese nationals, and what we call, I guess, locals, which is a very broad group. And we're very proud of the fact that we all work together very well. Couple of ways we do that, couple of keys to that. First of all, when we recruit, when we interview external candidates, we're very focused on whether they've got characteristics that will enable them to be successful in that environment. So we look for, particularly for experienced hires, look for individuals who are patient and flexible, who have an appetite for something that's interesting but challenging, and we avoid at all costs anyone who appears to have a level of self-importance about them, right? Because humility is very important, right? So you really need to be up for it, you need to be flexible and adaptable, and you need to be able to listen. And when we get that right, then it works very well. When we get it wrong, normally the individual wouldn't stay with the company for very long. Part of it is also education, educating our Chinese nationals on local business culture and local habits, and educating our locals on Chinese business culture. And as everyone here would know, it's one thing to be aware, it's another thing to actually change your behaviour in certain situations. So I think education and building skills is very important. You do all those things, you'll improve the probability of success, but you won't guarantee it.
A couple of thoughts about that. I think it's quite interesting. There's probably a paradox, because I think that on one hand I agree with you. I think that you'll have more of those business communities, and somehow we are structured this way now, right? So we know that Adelaide is the back office of Australia, and of course Mumbai is the hub of is the back office of the world, and all youth and Bollywood is where you make movies. All those things are. But on the other hand, I think that if you want to foster creativity, we actually need to start combining things. What I mean by that is innovation will come from a combination of finance with, graphic designer, and the development of apps with finance, accounting. So the innovation needs to come from the combination of all those skills. So people talk about polymaths. And when people ask me what's the best thing that the advice that you can give to my kids, make them very, very interested people in multiple fields, because if you organize ourselves around professions and around expertise, without having any contacts, we will create silos and the innovation will not emerge. So on one hand, I actually see the world as, the way we organize will be more around this concept of the communities coming together with multiple expertise in multiple areas. Think about if you go back 5 centuries in 1500s in Europe, that was very much the setting. So you had the philosopher that was a painter at the same time, a mathematician, and this is where innovation starts somehow emerging. So I believe that in the near future, this is what's going to happen, is this proliferation of skills and people coming together. Now, how to create a culture, or how do we put this melting pot of cultures operating with each other? I think that there are, again, many layers to that, but one of the things that I would like to point out is this sense of purpose. Why people come together. And when we have a purpose as a team, as a group, and when we are quite clear about that, and when, the reason why we are together is because we combine something to achieve something that is bigger than ourselves. Our differences become, minor. So if our purpose is to change the world in a way, or make the world a better place, and if you can come together with a clear purpose as a team or as an organization, all those things are really important. The other thing that I would like to point out is, because the question of diversity is being out there. So how can we live in a workforce that has 5 generations? How can we truly foster the minds of a millennium that has a really, they know about technology far more than the CEO. How can we be humble in our positions as CEO to absolutely tap into the diversity that is in the organization? What can we learn from them? On the other hand, what can we learn from people that are only in the workforce? And how those dimensions can actually come together and truly find ways of collaborating. How can we actually use refugees to better understand terrorism around the world? All those questions are, but that means a true mindset of the way we work, I think.
So I would like to answer your question from my own experience. For an extended period of time, I was a global leader of a firm, KPMG, and in our team, we grew from a team of 3,000 people to 11,000 people. And we were in roughly 25 countries. Most of these people were located. And those people worked as one team for us to grow at the pace at which we are growing. And people like myself and my fellow partners had the responsibility of generating trust at the global level. So we have 5 partners, and we had to connect with all these 25, 30 managing partners of each country who were having these centers of expertise that you mentioned, India. And we very quickly realized that the behaviors of individuals are very much driven by the history that these people share. So for example, French don't get along with English. And I learned that the hard way when I became the managing partner of Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India. So one needs to understand history and what drives people's perceptions in terms of what has happened in the history. That's very important. That's my personal learning. From my personal learning, I would say that. The second thing is everyone has a personal value proposition. So I would build relationships with all those 25 people based on what they believe is valuable. So once you have a personal relationship, it's just not strictly professional. Many times people say, oh, it's all professional. It's a personal relationship that often creates trust, and that helps the professional relationships. So those 25 partners who are still with KPMG are some of my best friends today, because we not only had a great professional relationship, but very, very good personal relationships. So that is the second thing. And third thing is try to figure out what will make them successful. And they will then look at what will make you successful. So those are 3 things I did, and I had to never look back. It's been very beneficial for me.
I'm not sure if I have to answer the question anymore because everyone else already answered it, but just probably a couple of quick points. For me, trying to build cross-cultural competencies, again, is a challenge. I'd probably say education exposure for my mind. I also mentioned before how I like to look for adaptable people, and that's usually an open-mindedness to different cultures and curious about other people. again, personal relationships with people of different cultures. You learn a lot from those as well. So having the right culture that fosters those kind of things. I do a lot of work with my own staff around building self-awareness and awareness of others, and anything from looking at strength finders to behavioural styles to what their personal core values are, because it helps explain why certain people do the things they do or make decisions on a certain basis. So the more you can understand from your colleagues, I guess the more empathy, the more emotional intelligence you're going to have as well. So there's no sort of silver bullet to answer that question, but there's a lot of things that you can do. I'm also a big believer in mentorship, and so if I mentored someone of a different cultural background, I'll learn a lot through that process and vice versa.
Sorry, yes, there's just the second part, which was about how you create the built environment that underscores all this emotional intelligence, cross-cultural. That's where I wanted to go.
Yeah, okay. So for us, we own small shopping centres, and so we recognise the need to transform them into what we call community hubs, which are really specific to the community, understanding what the community wants. And so a lot of that is spending time understanding your customer. It's that sort of service design process, talking to the customer, really trying to understand, because every suburb and its customers will sort of want something different from their centre. And so when you're listening a lot to the customer, then you're able to deliver on whatever the outcome is. Internally we have a lot of processes. We have this Kaizen process, which is around continuous improvement, but it's an opportunity for everyone to put forward ideas or suggestions on how we can improve not only our properties, but also how we run our business and things like that. So that's one example of how we can get closer to what we're trying to achieve. A lot of collaboration, pretty flat structure, those kind of things. Yeah.
I'm just going to kind of add to the tail end of that, because cross-cultural competencies is something that I work a lot with my clients, and we work on a framework that the acronym is SOUL to the third. So we always start with the self, and we really just kind of tear apart our own biases, our own ways of thinking, all our different types of cultures that we're involved in, because it's not just one. And then when we feel that the participants or the learners really have a good grounding in that, we move to the other, and we really start to understand, the historical ramifications of the relationships between different countries and peoples, and looking at that kind of contextually, as well as how they see the world and do things, because we have all sorts of lenses that we carry and we put on and off depending on the situation. And then we finally move to the us, because invariably we have an understanding of ourselves at a very profound level, and then really doing our best to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. When we come together, there's still going to be ruffled feathers at times, misunderstandings, conflict, both positive and negative, and how do we work through that? And then that's where the L comes in, which is leveraging, learning, and leadership, and that's more of a management kind of leverage and organizational-wide thing. But then giving the people opportunities to really integrate that learning and the practice and the role play. Soft skills aren't always so soft, as I say, because that's usually where many of us, we could always do better, right, in our own personal growth. And human relationships are always so very complex. So I don't know if that helps to, but add along with that some great advice from our panels, so thank you. So before I go on to the next question, is there any other question from the audience that you'd like to put forth at the moment? That's okay. You can keep thinking. I'll go on to the next one. Okay. Well, going along with this, and Brad, we'll start with you on this one. With the increased popularity of virtual collaboration as a way we get things done, what importance do you place on the physical work environment moving forward? You kind of started to answer that a little bit. And do you think that organizations will increase their use of virtual workplaces, or will they look more to co-working hubs to accommodate their workforce's need for flexibility?
So you probably sort of know my answer to this. I'm a big believer in a particular central location, because there's so many benefits that can arise from that. But we live in a world where flexibility is important as well, so we can't always get that. I noticed IBM recently decided to change tack and bring in a lot of their team members to the physical environment. And I think it was mostly the marketing department, because they saw the need for the marketing department in particular to be very collaborative and to be pretty agile in terms of how they worked. And by agile, I mean there was a lot of prototyping, and it's sort of an iterative process where you need a lot of those touch points with your colleagues. And so I think part of the answer is also depends on the organisational strategy and structure and what they're trying to achieve. But if collaboration is really important, then I think the physical location is important. It doesn't have to be all the time, but it needs to be times where you've got everyone together. I think co-working and things like that probably could work, satellite offices and things like that. I think in terms of virtual communication, I mean, I Skype with people, but you're still missing that geographical proximity. There's just something missing. Whilst you see them on a video, there's still something missing. So, yeah, again, I'm a bit old school. I prefer face-to-face.
Well, 5 years ago I would have vehemently disagreed with you. But now I've actually come around to your point of view, which is valuing the in-person dealings between workers more and more. In our current environment, in business culture, there's a different default level of trust, which requires staff to be front and centre in the office. And I think a lot of our offices around the world actually do have clock in, clock off for the officers. But in our local environment, people need to be front and centre. I've become quite a fan of that. Most of our rooms actually have video conferencing facilities, so the technology is there, and we certainly use it when we need to communicate with regional or head office. But having people in the office communicating in real time, staring each other in the face, I think counts for a lot. I'm an ex-IBMer as well, and I was very surprised when I heard that news about IBM changing teams. I think they were one of the pioneer organisations for workplace flexibility. But I think they've evolved. I think, if at all possible, having teams together in person is the ideal. There's no doubt if you can't do that, technology can assist enormously, but I still think that's the best option.
Sorry, go on. Yeah, please. I just wanted to say one more thing. I think also with the physical environment, there's an opportunity to really improve that. So I think one of the reasons why people may not like coming into work is you've got some pretty crappy offices out there, and so whereas you'll see the more, I guess, advanced companies, they'll really think about their work environment. And if you look at the millennials, they want to be engaged at work. They probably prefer a more casual environment. And so if you've got a kitchen where they can, mix with people, if it's pretty casual and laid back, and I don't know, table tennis table or whatever else, that's going to, make people want to come into work more. Interestingly, when I speak to some of my colleagues and allow them to work from home sometimes, some of them say they have to get dressed up in a suit to work from home, because if they didn't, they wouldn't get anything done. So it's pretty unusual how some people need to adapt themselves to be productive.
Yes, I think this is an area of, again, a great focus for us. We've got 200 offices worldwide. We've got 10,000 staff. And the philosophy that we follow at GHD is, as knowledge workers, we encourage you to spend as much time as possible with the clients. And if you need to get to the office, then we don't expect you to travel for 2 hours. We will try and get you an office very close to your home. And in Sydney, we've got about 7 or 8 different locations where staff can get in and engage. And if we have to bring the team together, we'll bring them on a higher purpose together once a month so that they can engage. So this is all centered around the flexibility of the employee and treating employee, what is important for the employee, and creating it. But more interesting, this morning I was actually reading news, and I saw a very innovative idea as far as workplace is concerned, which was actually, which stressed my boundaries of thinking, and that is, there's a company called 2 spaces in Sydney that actually converts restaurants and bars into workplaces. And if you want, you can hire that for $150, $160 a month. You can go to one of these facilities and convert that completely to a workplace. By 4:30, you can get out. So those kind of flexible workplaces are coming up, which adds to your personal experience as an employee. And I'm a big believer in that. I don't believe in people turning up to work just because they have to sit at a desk.
Yeah, just another last comment. I think picking on your last point, we cannot forget that, and this is a trend that's going to grow, which is this concept around the gig economy. 35% of the US workforce work already in this regime, which means I don't work for you, I won't work with you. They are not employed by the organization. They have a gig with the organization. I have a temporary gig with you, and then I go together. So what does it mean is that there is no workplace for these people, right? So their workplace is where? Is the coffee shop, is the bar, is the restaurant, is my own place, is when it's the total flexibility. Now, I absolutely agree that human contact is the most important thing. I spent 3 months in the privileged gardening leave between one organization and the other one, developing my own project. First thing that I did wake up in the morning was not to put the suit, but put my sneakers and my laptop and go to the next coffee shop. I know all the coffee shops in Sydney because that's the community that we create. And I will sit down with the cool cats that were, most interesting people, and I engage in conversations. Because human people, we need human contact. There's no doubt about it. And that's going to be a skill in the future, right? How can we get out of our technology, connect with each other, and use everywhere, if you want, as workplaces and workspaces. KPMG just moved to this, big office, which is totally agile and flexible. So the policy is that we have about 8 floors. You can sit wherever you want because people are encouraged to connect with multiple areas. Guess what? People tend to organize themselves in villages. It's almost like, please, can you sit in a different chair today? Because you sit here yesterday, the week before. So we are animals of communities. We need to be connected all the time. So I believe that it's desirable to give flexibility to people, work from whatever you want, because technology will enable to do that, and we need flexibility. However, give them a space to go back to.
That's awesome. Just kind of picking up on that thread, because I'm one of those nomads that I make friends at the local cafe as long as there's a place to plug my laptop in. But some people are starting to talk about augmented reality and virtual reality in terms of meeting spaces and bringing people in. In terms of the work that you're currently doing or you see on the horizon or people you're working with in your clients, do you see that as something that might pick up moving into the future?
Yeah, I think that's going to definitely pick up. I put 10 disruptive trends for the next decade on my LinkedIn website. I was a part of a think tank, and virtual and augmented reality is one of the 10 disruptive trends for the next decade, and the way in which it's going to change our life. We haven't even scratched the surface on VAR. I've got a small team of 10 people on VAR. The possibility of what you can do is just enormous. And Bill Gates was just yesterday, he made a comment saying that VAR can actually save lives. That the application of VAR is huge in the medical field. So it's going to be one of our disruptive trends for the next decade.
You heard it here. Want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, sorry, not a fan of VR. In the startup hub I've got in Chinatown, there's a VR studio, and I've given it a go, and it has its applications. And there's some groups out there trying to do training through VR and different things like that. I've tried VR for real estate as well, so instead of having to build a display suite, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a display suite for residential project marketing, you can basically walk through the whole apartment, with these goggles and things like that. It's still something missing for me. So I think there's an application for it definitely, but nothing beats what we've got here. And so to me, it's always going to be secondary to You know, and the application might be, you know, where you're overseas and you're trying to sell something, or, you know, different things like that. But yeah, again, there's some challenges around technology.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt that speaking of challenges, Phil and I were talking this morning about, I saw an article that said Google is funding a project where there will be technology to take over the writing of local news, and Phil said to me, yeah, but did you see the one where the AI actually reported on an earthquake from 1925 a few weeks ago, and it was like, oh, hang on, whoops, so I think that we're going to be working out the kinks for some time as well. We're going to move along here, and Luke, I'm going to have you start with this one if you don't mind. Look, we've talked a lot about the potential widespread unemployment due to technology and automation, robotics, and perhaps even unemployability, meaning people that aren't going to be able to be employed because of skill sets. In terms of, applying this idea to the financial and technology sectors, what skills or capabilities should individuals in these industries, or maybe across the board, acquire or hone to future-proof their careers, in your opinion?
Well, I think I touched on some of them earlier in relation to collaboration, leadership, some of those soft skills. And Kim, I mentioned before about when you're dealing with an important stakeholder, understanding what's their background, what's their history, what would make them successful. And they're important questions to ask when you're dealing with any stakeholder. So even if you're in a relatively entry-level finance position in a commercial organisation, and you're dealing with different people internally within the business, you're going to still apply those same principles. So I think those skills will continue to be important. As I said before, I think the transition won't be painless, and I think there'll be certainly some people out of work during the transition. The bit being able to reskill, or keeping your skills agile, being able to adapt, I think is very important. I'm not sure exactly how it's done. I mean, I'm looking forward to my next career. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm looking forward to the next 10 or 20 years plus. But how do I adjust my skill set? How do I re-educate myself so I can move into that career? And I think with the technology disruption, I think it's as you pointed out, the reskilling that is very difficult and very important, and I think it probably requires some central policy to assist the workforce to reskill. And so I just had a thought before when we were talking about VR, and how it's not the same as being in person. I still believe what I said, but there's a chance, of course, we're all wrong.
True.
There's a chance that when we look back in 20 years, we'll hear our comments and think, well, we were a little naive about just how good that technology will become, because VR will play a big role in the future, and it may well play a far bigger role than we can imagine at this point in time. So I was just
thank you. Who else would like to tackle this one?
Yeah, so Melissa, this is a moment as Klaus Schwab, the president of Davos, has said, this is a moment of great promise and great peril. It's great promise for those who are ready, and it is an absolute disaster for those who are not ready. So the example that I gave right at the beginning about the tech industry, which is happening today, as we speak, is happening today, is the Indian tech industry, which is the back office of the world and all those sorts of things. They are laying off people en masse, and all big names are doing it, CEOs are doing it. Why? Because they haven't changed with the time. But at the same time, they need millions of workers who can do work in the digital space. They're not able to find them. Why? Because they didn't do what Luke was saying, train the people in a timely manner to transition. So as employers, we have the responsibility, social responsibility, to look ahead and say, is my workforce across the firm capable to take us forward? I think that's one of the most important questions the CEOs ask, and that's what we're trying to do at GHD.
Excellent.
Big questions.
It is a big question.
Big questions. What type of skills required in the future? Look, the World Economic Forum puts first number one in actually it's not far away, in 2020, they actually say that is critical thinking. Our ability to differentiate between what's fake and news, ability to actually recognize that the earthquake is actually from 1925 and not from last night. So there is so much, rubbish going on the internet. So we need skills, and we need to all have, be qualified to understand what's rubbish news, fake information, nonsensical information, and actually what's real and what's useful. So I think that's going to be, more and more important in the future. They also said it's about, complex problem solving. We have all this, technology to enable, a bigger, better, faster, potentially, type of work. However, there are so much complex problems that we still need to resolve. I would even go, I'm not at all again like Brad, but if you go 50 years back, I'm not sure if the world is a better place today, right? So we can, again, spend the whole day saying it's better or worse. In some aspects it's better, but in some other aspects it's actually worse. There are professions emerging as the cuddler. I mean, hello, what are we building as a society? We need cuddlers, that we pay people to cuddle because we don't have human contact. So this exists, and is emerging quite a lot, which is, on one hand, is quite sad. I guess that, if you look at the fundamental questions of the world, the fact that we are, the new generation is actually living probably, is more unhealthier that used to be the previous one. So we are creating, we have more obese people, we have people that are living in poverty, the gap between rich and poor is increasing. So I think that climate change is a big problem. So I think that there are so much complex questions that we still need to resolve. We are definitely not done as a society. Hopefully technology will come to help us solve all these big questions. But we need to be able to foster that technology and apply the skills around judgment, around critical thinking, around collaborative, how to coordinate people, how to manage people, how to lead them, how to not look at our differences, but actually how to come together as communities to solve key questions and problems that we cannot solve by ourselves. So all these skills, I think that are going to be quite critical and fundamental to the future. Can I just add another thing? Of course, probably all of us will have different professions in 10 years, which means that from our point of view, we need to be we need to have this entrepreneur spirit all the time, which is how can I create, something out of who I am, and that's going to be probably the critical point for all of us in the future.
And I think a sense of personal resilience, that psychological resilience.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, probably the key skill required for the future is resume writing skills. But I think, in all seriousness, I think what the panel said about that continuous learning component. Whether you're a CEO or a junior, that continuous learning needs to be part of your weekly routine, because the world is changing. You need to change as well. I look at myself. A few years ago, before I set up this startup hub, I knew nothing about startups or the industry. I thought automation had to do with cars, or I thought VC was the Viet Cong. I'd be asking, well, why don't they do communists in startups? And then, don't tell anyone this, but blockchain, I still can't explain how blockchain works. It's damn confusing, but it's there and it's going to be part of our lives. So I've learned so much through the startups that I mentor, and I've been able to apply a lot of those learnings to my own business, because my property business is in a pretty conservative traditional industry, and it needs to change as well. So I'd rather be at the front rather than the back.
Excellent. Look, we're running close to time. I just want to ask one quick final question, and your best answer. So many times we could take a really dystopian or negative view of what the future is going to hold, but I like to personally think that there's opportunities in front of us. So, in your advice, opinion, what is the one thing that we should be paying attention to in terms of opportunity in this future that we're entering?
Well, it's a slightly generic answer, but I think it's really around agility, which I think we referred to in different ways today. You need to be agile and responding to the opportunities in front of you. We do know that with this technology disruption, there will be plenty of opportunities, there'll be new businesses, new technologies, new jobs. We're not sure exactly what they will be, of course, but if we're smart enough and agile enough and respond quickly, and we talked about speed earlier, I think Brad talked about it, if we're quick and agile in how we respond to what we can see in front of us and what develops tomorrow or next week or next month or next year, I think that will put you in a strong position.
I would like to say I ask every day that one question when I get up in the morning, no matter what my legacy is and the conquests I had in my life past 25, 30 years, how can I be relevant to my stakeholders today? I think every day we need to reinvent ourselves to remain relevant and add value. And I ask that question myself, and I ask that more since I left KPMG in 2015, because you're no longer having that large organization that you rely on. So if you are confident that you can add value, then there's no doubt everyone else will find value in you.
What are the opportunities? I guess my question is, what type of world do we want to create as a collective? And the fact that we have a new technology and so on will allow us to do those things. So there are heaps of examples. No matter where you are, you work in government, you work in business, you work in. How can you and your team and you as an individual and your family absolutely create a place where you can live better and all of us can live better? So much to be done. There are heaps of stuff to be done there. So I look at the future with a very, very positive look, and I think that all of us, we can, we'll get there, and hopefully in 20 years we'll be sitting here with so much better worlds around us. So that's my hope.
I'm probably struggling to find a particular opportunity because I think there'll be just so many opportunities, but I'm encouraged by the fact that if Donald Trump can become president, then there's hope for us all.
Excellent. On that note, I want to invite Phil to come back up, and if our speakers can our panelists just stay there for a second. Thank you so much. But as we do that, can we all thank them, please?
Thank you, Melissa. And just Melissa is just grabbing some small gifts for you as a thanks for that wonderful talk. There were so many interesting points there. I think the two that resonated with me mostly was this first point about embracing humanity. And we saw that in the article that Melissa mentioned by the LA Times, where they used a robot journalist to produce news stories for them, I guess when the reporters went home at night. And one robot wrote an article about an earthquake off the coast of Santa Barbara, only to turn out that it happened almost 100 years ago, 1925. And as a former journalist, I took particular pleasure in that. Because you all know the media has had a lot of disruption over the last few years. The last main point that resonated with me was about long-term planning. NASA has been in the news today about their their Jupiter mission. NASA doesn't have a 10-year plan. They don't have a 20-year plan. They have a 100-year plan. And I think for most companies that tend to focus on the next quarterly results, it's interesting to see an organisation, excuse me, got a frog in my throat, an organisation that has long-term views and based on not just generational change within their workplace, but also technological change. So Melissa, if you present our guests with the gifts, thanks. And would you please give them a round of applause as well. And thank you everybody. Please continue the networking. We have fruit outside as well and some more drinks, so please enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you for coming out tonight.